Welcome to the Progressive Radio News Hour. I'm Steve Linman. My guest today is Lizzie Phelan. Lizzie is a journalist, activist. She has supported people's struggles globally against U.S. and Western imperialism, a very, very noble undertaking, especially as by my count, with new information seeming to come out all the time, I count Obama waging 6 wars. 6 wars. I don't think anybody else has said that. Let me count them. Iraq, Afghanistan, Pakistan. I separate the two. Pakistan is being droned on a regular basis. Many, who knows how many, hundreds of mostly civilians are being killed. And the best data on how bad that is for every so-called militant, whatever a militant is. I call the person a resistance fighter. That's what a militant really is. But for every resistance fighter killed, 50 civilians are killed along with them. We're talking about innocent men, women, children, babies, newborns. They're being murdered in cold blood. That's 3. Libya, of course, is 4, and that's what we'll talk about with Lizzie. Number 5 is Yemen. It's being droned. And number 6, I just saw a report this morning that Washington, the Pentagon, is droning Somalia. Well, Washington has waged a proxy war in Somalia for over 2 decades, so that's no surprise at all. And there are other proxy wars going on. Lizzie spent a good deal of time in Tripoli. She may go back again. She saw what's going on firsthand, and it is not what you will read in the New York Times or hear on CNN or Fox News or the BBC or the other major mainstream news outlets that go out of their way to be sure you know nothing except the managed news that the people, the imperialists running these wars, want you to know. But people going to Libya see it firsthand. Lizzie, I welcome you. Let me mention one thing first before I turn it over to you and let you explain. You were on once before, some weeks back, and you can update with any new information you have, and there's new stuff coming out all the time. I have written a fair amount about what I call, well, what is called Freedom Flotilla 2. It includes a U.S. ship called the Audacity of Hope, the U.S. boat to Gaza, delivering humanitarian aid against the illegal Israeli siege. I called one of my senators, and I tried to speak to a press representative. They stonewalled me. They would not put someone on the phone to talk to me. The senator is Mark Kirk. He's a Republican from Illinois, and he has made a statement, and let me quote what he said. These are his words. He wants the U.S. military to, quote, make available all necessary special operations and naval support to the Israeli Navy to effectively disable flotilla vessels before they can pose a threat to Israeli coastal security or put Israeli lives at risk. Who is he talking about? He's talking about humanitarian activists. Kathy Kelly from Chicago is on board. Ray McGovern is on board. Medea Benjamin from Code Pink is on board. I forget her last name, forgive me. Hetty, the 80-plus-year-old Holocaust survivor, is on board. And they're putting Israeli security at risk. Well, Lizzie, how about all that? I just want one final comment, then you take over. I'll say it point blank to my senator from Illinois. I condemn you for what you said and for what you support. And for all the people from Illinois who may listen to this program, I hope you will never vote for this man who should be hauled off to The Hague for even suggesting that these humanitarian activists be attacked by the U.S. Navy as well as the Israeli Navy. Anyway, the war is raging in Libya and so many places. Lizzie, I welcome you back to the program.
Thank you, Stephen. I completely back your condemnation. I think I haven't looked into it, but I heard a report this morning that an Irish convoy to Gaza, somehow the ship has been sabotaged, so it might be worth looking into that as well.
Oh, I heard that, and another ship was sabotaged. Its propeller was cut off. And now the ships are being guarded with 24-hour security. They've delayed the flotilla, Lizzie. They have not stopped it. These people are coming. Others came before this one. There'll be many more coming after this one. And this will continue until this illegal siege is ended. And for me, it's when the occupation is ended anyway. Shall we shift gears and talk about Libya? Because the nightmare continues there as well, as you well know.
Yes, of course. I think we're at a bit of a strange time because it seems like, NATO's obviously not doing how they plan to, as usual. Britain and France have clearly, gone into this war with their typical colonial arrogance, but they don't actually have the capability to do what they've said they can. They're fast running out of money, out of weapons. There's major divisions going on within NATO at the moment, and in England we have a situation where senior members of the military are telling the government we just don't have if we carry on in Libya as we are at the moment, within a few months the defence of England will be under severe threat. And then on the other hand, we have the politicians, our defense secretary and prime minister, basically telling these senior members of the military to be quiet and not say these kind of things in public, and that, Britain is fine and will be able to carry on invading countries, as we have done so throughout our history.
It's astonishing, Lizzie. I mean, I can't imagine. It's wonderful to hear these comments come out, and I take it as a good sign. But it's astonishing to think that England faces a threat from a foreign enemy. What foreign enemy are these generals talking about anyway?
Well, to be honest, I don't think it's so unrealistic either to think that, with the track record of England and the United States and the West in general, that they would, I think it's quite realistic that they would be. There's plenty of people around the world that have witnessed their loved ones die and suffer at the hands of my home country. And so, it's not so unreasonable to think that people would want to take revenge, essentially, but
well, it's not easy traveling from all of these war zones to England or to America. I mean, it's tough going from America or England to the war zones, but these people can't easily buy a plane ticket or get on a boat, and let alone transport weapons and be able to do something. And when there are occasional either actual or staged stunts, so-called terror attacks, either in your country, Lizzie, or here in America, odds are they had nothing to do with so-called terrorists pulling these things off or allegedly pulling them off. These are homegrown events. So you had an underground situation in Madrid. They had a train bombing. I don't think that the so-called terrorists had anything to do with either one of those any more than so-called terrorists had anything to do with 9/11. These are all homegrown events. The state does them so they can scare the dickens out of the home populations and go off and wage limitless imperial wars, and that's the way the dirty game continues.
But the need for Britain to defend itself comes from Britain going and provoking wars, and eventually, they will be provoking wars with Iran and God forbid with China as well. So they have got to have these long-term kind of strategic plans in place. But so they're clearly in a mess in Libya, but they're still carrying on. They can't just withdraw now because they can't lose face. They've gone into the war. So it looks like they're just, there's still talk about boots on the ground. We know that there are already boots on the ground anyway. There's been SAS on the ground from the beginning, the CIA on the ground from the beginning. And then obviously there's the so-called rebels or counter-revolutionaries. So they're continuing to bomb Libya incessantly, and it looks like they're determined to destroy 40 years of progress in that country and do similarly what they did in Iraq, let private companies go in and make a killing there. And then at the same time, there's, which isn't talked about so much, is they've hit Libya with extremely tough sanctions, so that on the one hand they're letting weapons go into the rebel areas like Benghazi, but they're stopping food, fuel and medicine from entering into non-NATO counter-revolutionary areas. And so in some places you have people queuing for 6 days for food and medicine, which it wasn't like when I was there actually. And as we know, in Iraq, sanctions killed millions of people. So this is, a really grave situation. And then on the other hand, we're continuing to see videos and images coming out of black Libyans and African and immigrants from elsewhere in Africa being lynched publicly, which is the most traumatizing images and footage that I've ever seen in my life. And this is of course because of the initial story that has been proved to be a lie from Al Jazeera, or there's been organizations such as Amnesty, etc., that have come out to say that there was no evidence of Al Jazeera's claim that Gaddafi was hiring mercenaries, yet these claims are still being repeated in the press. I read a report yesterday saying that again. So I've seen that so much. There's been we had as well the other day, Amnesty came out and said, and I think Human Rights Watch as well came out and said that this claim that Gaddafi's government is using rape as a weapon, there's no basis for it whatsoever.
Did Al Jazeera report that Gaddafi was using rape as a weapon?
I can't remember which. I'm pretty sure. It's probably very likely that it was Al Jazeera, but it was being reported quite widely across the press that we have access to here in England, at least. And that's been said that there was this story that he was handing out Viagra to his soldiers, and then they were systematically raping women. But that was quite widespread in the press. I'm not sure if it was just Al Jazeera or if it was specifically Al Jazeera.
Lizzie, it's really shocking how they come up with these gross falsehoods, and it reminds me of going back to the Gulf War, when leading up to it, one of the stories that incited the U.S. public was when a young woman testified before a congressional committee in 1990 about Saddam pulling babies out of incubators.
Yeah,
it later turned out that this was a PR stunt. A U.S. PR company was hired to create this stunt. The young woman was the daughter of a Kuwaiti ambassador. The whole thing was a complete fabrication. It never happened. It was a big lie. So now we have another big lie. You need to demonize the head of the nation that you are illegally attacking. So, when
but really the lies about Libya, make the lies about Iraq pale in comparison. They make the lies about Iraq seem sincere. So we've had that Gaddafi is using rape as a weapon, that he's hiring mercenaries, that he cluster bombed Misrata, which again, I think it was Amnesty or Human Rights Watch said that was actually a NATO bomb, that Gaddafi is a dictator when in fact he doesn't have any official position in the country, that his forces were firing on civilians. Again, there's no evidence. That 10,000 people, we had one report of 10,000 being killed in Benghazi, one that 30,000 were killed in Benghazi, but we still haven't seen the bodies or the mass graves. There's no evidence. And we've heard, we've heard that there was, the NATO had to go in to prevent a genocide happening in Benghazi. There's just absolutely, there's lie after lie after lie after lie that gets exposed as a lie, but yet they don't seem to exit the narrative that the media is using. And so it's become just accepted truth amongst our populations. And it's really, really dangerous. History is being written by these lies,
Well, absolutely, Lizzie. Another thing that all this reminds me of was going back to the late 1990s when the so-called Srebrenica in Serbia